Great. So your hosts today are AK
and Ivana.
And today we're kicking off chapter 3 with two guest experts to discuss the story part. Welcome to Dr. Cherry Wu and Rob England.
Hello, thank you.
It's so great to have you here. Cherry and Rob, you have the company Teal Unicorn together, where you consult and coach and train and create content about new and better ways of working and managing. And I was hoping one of you could elaborate a bit about what you do.
Okay, I'll do that. So I have an IT background, Cherry has a business background, but I sort of immersed in the agile stuff and got into business agility. And so we work together at a executive level, consulting on better ways of working and particularly better ways of managing as the key to unlock new ways of working. And from Cherry's name, you might guess that we do a lot of that in Vietnam, but we work in other countries as well. But particularly, we thrive in Vietnam because Cherry can work in Vietnamese and do wonderful things. As well as that, we've written a number of books. So Cherry, you could mention our books quickly.
Yep, we have an open management book. It's our newest book, right? So the book is talking about why we need the new ways of working. And it's particularly the open-minded and open ways of working, inviting people, and all about open. And we also have a book that helps the manager to manage their team or their organization the new ways. And we call the agile managers, but it's small A, not a big A.
And obviously available in Vietnamese and English. So Cherry's holding up the Vietnamese version of one there. Yeah.
That is so cool.
That's awesome. Well, we've given both of you some homework for today, and I would be curious to hear more about if one of you could kind of summarize what happens in the story parts that you've read for today.
We'll summarize the story. The story is very there's a lot happens. So I'll call out the bits that resonated with me, because I think the theme you're going for in here, correct me if I'm wrong, is around changing our attitude to failure and celebrating, embracing failure, which resonates strongly with us. So there's a number of failures in here, little things, mistakes people make, where she drops the buns down the stairwell and then doesn't tell anybody, and then big screw ups where they the poor I've got to get all the names right, but the poor lady who's doing culture interviews was unprepared when the CFO walked into the interview and kind of freaked out a bit and got all stressed about the fact that she was talking to the CFO and he wasn't responding well, and she kind of feels like she screwed the whole thing up, and a number of failures in between those. And it's quite interesting that through the course of the story, they explore owning up to the failure. I mean, she owns up to having dropped the buns, and being open about their emotions and some really deeper, what did she say, existential feelings, talking about this stressful conversation with the CFO, and there's some other failures in there too. What did I miss? Well, Marie realized that dropping buns down the stairwell was the least of her problems, and that she hadn't set up. What's the lady's name doing the interviews? Help me out here.
I think it's Sheila, right? The one who is
Sheila.
facilitating for Frank.
She hadn't warned Sheila that, hey, you're going to be interviewing the CFO, and allowed her to sort of get herself into a headspace.
Yeah, actually, I was curious to hear your take on this because you do work with the better ways of managing, and I did think that Sheila felt unprepared. And do you think it was Marie's job as Sheila's manager to kind of prepare better, or?
Well, no. So
we have some concept that's so-called how to put it, darling? Coppers, not gold. You prepare enough, not over preparing, and it's more about adapt, right, to the situation and with emerge rather than prepare everything very well organized, very well prepared. Sometimes over prepare is a cost.
there was a lot of other things at play. So yeah, other than needing to lift the quality, there was a breakdown in communication, clearly. But it's not the manager's job to set everything up for everyone, right? So certainly we talk a lot about inverting the hierarchy, and the manager is there as a servant to the work, which doesn't mean spoon feeding them, though. It means sort of setting up the environment in which they work. And so I'm sure she could have equally prepared herself for that, or as a collaborative team, they could have been communicating more just so everyone had awareness of what's happening. And then
sorry.
Oh,
I was just going to say,
and then,
sorry, go ahead.
Well, the other element is psychological safety, that she didn't feel safe doing that interview, and that stressed her out and put her on edge.
And I just wanted to say that I also like what Sherry said about they could have prepared how they could adapt in the situation if something went wrong, instead of preparing the talk itself.
And as Rob said about the psychological safety, we can see that it's obvious that in that organization does not exist. That's why Shayla is freaking out when she saw the boss. And I think it's a lot to do with managers, the attitudes of managers, and I don't think that she saw the managers as a team member or someone she can, trust or feel comfortable being around. And that's a lot to improve. Yeah.
And if Marie had seen it coming and taken steps to set her up and protect her, that's kind of like putting Band-Aids on the problem. That's her trying to compensate for the fact that this isn't going to go well unless she does something. That all of that kind of work that Marie might have done to set it up is actually waste. It's actually work that people are doing to compensate for the issues in the culture and the environment, I think. Is that a fair statement?
So it's more like we look at that situation as there's a deeper problem rather than just the surface. The surface is that, okay, something failed, but there's a reason for that. It is deeper. Maybe it's not because she doesn't prepare well, just because mentally she got, it's a problem with the way people she's being managed around, right?
And I do think that the very top executives do have a huge influence on the culture. It does flow down from the top, I think. And so I haven't quite got, just from a quick read, haven't quite got where the issues with the culture are coming from. I'm not sure you've revealed that in the book yet, the deepest root issues. But that's certainly what we would be looking at if we were working with this as a client, would be, we can see all these symptoms, but there's something, and we would be turning a lot of attention up the pyramid to see what's setting the tone, not just the chief executive and perhaps their top team, but even behind that, the governance and the ownership of the organization, and what kind of pressures is it being put under, and what expectations are being laid on the organization. And values, what values have been given to the organization to say we want to be this kind of organization. That comes, a lot of that comes from above the CE.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right.
And maybe also some market dynamics. What kind of marketplace is this company in, and what are the rules in this marketplace?
And what is so some of the culture flows from outside, absolutely. We're looking at houses at the moment, right? If you're selling houses, then you're immersed in one set of values that are different to if you're Médecins Sans Frontières going and helping on battlefields. I mean, you're immersed in very different sets of values that come in from outside the organization as well, the market. And then also, what's the market doing? I mean, if you're struggling to make money, then there can be some very damaging stuff for the psychological safety, and there can be some weakening of moral or values positions as well.
I would also be curious to hear your view on the fact that Marie didn't spot that Sheila was upset about this, because the story that we have for today is several days after this event where Sheila was confronted with the CFO and everything went awry. So is it Marie's role to monitor her employees and help them with their emotional states, or is that something that's the employee's own responsibility to act on?
Oh, that's a good question.
I think for that, anything that happened as a good manager, you should also say, you should always say, look, it happened, but how can we make it better next time? How can we improve it, rather than, whose faults, or, and try to analyze it very deeply in the situation, say, oh, because of the problem, because of that. So normally people tend to focus on problem rather than solution, but we always try people to help. Try to help people to focus on solutions, not problems. Because if we keep asking about problems, then everyone get frustrated and start, blaming each other. So, or they just try to find something to blame, rather than, to focus on how can we improve.
But that helps move on from it. But the question is also about how much should a manager be detecting the fact that someone's personally distressed or having issues about something? And I think we do say very much that a manager, personnel, so we separate personnel management from value management, right? As is quite fashionable sometimes. It's not our idea, but so if you're in a role of personnel manager, if you do have responsibility for those people, then yes, you should be having some awareness of what's going on. But equally, you want to have an environment where people feel safe enough to speak up too.
And also, I think that normally that the traditional managers, they tend to be like not quite connected to their staff. So they just have no idea about the personnel and about, whether people are sad or upset or happy even. So I think it's more about like if they're people's people, or at least you try to be close to your people, then it's really about the people skills you had to develop, right? It's not something someone can teach you, or okay, next time you watch for this or what for that. It's all about people skills that you have to be, very close and treat people like people, rather than they are your staff. And so that because they are staff, they are lower, so I be far away or be distant to them.
It's sort of the conventional model, isn't it? So it's cool if a manager can pick it up, but also I don't think they should feel bad if they don't, because some people don't feel safe, or prefer not to reveal their emotions at work. And So I think it's okay if a manager doesn't detect. I don't think that's a failure of management to not detect, but I think it's very nice. It's good work if they can. And it's certainly becoming more and more as we move to higher levels of consciousness, man. You know, I mean, it sounds very pretentious, but as we move forward culturally as societies, then it is more important that managers understand pastoral care of employees and do take some responsibility for that, not the old get over it and keep your personal life out of the office kind of historical attitude. It's definitely moving towards management. It's seen as a part of management's role to care. And I think one of the keys for what we do in Vietnam is when Cherry explains to old school managers, to 20th century managers, you know, it's all right to care. It's okay to be nice. I think that comes as a revelation to some of them, doesn't it, Cherry?
I love that.
Yeah, but they just don't know the better way.
Mm.
So once you tell them that it's okay to be kind, it's okay to not shouting, it's okay to ask people how are you, and really, you know, be like brother or sister rather than just always keep distance, because some people just don't know how to behave. Nobody tell them that this.
And in fact, they're
better.
playing against their natural predisposition to be nice, some of them, and thinking that as a manager they must not do that. And it's kind of liberating to them to be told that they can. It's like, oh, what? Yeah. Quite sad, really.
But in the story part, we also have Eric, who's the one who ends up bringing everyone together for lunch and kind of taking on that responsibility for everyone's well-being. So we also have a role who does this naturally, that is not necessarily the manager. So is this something that needs to be anchored within the leadership role, or is it something that we all have the responsibility to do?
There's that word leadership, right? So we get quite passionate in, I don't know about in Vietnamese, darling, I don't know how it plays out there, but certainly in our English books, we get quite passionate about separating out leader from manager. And I always say leader is not a title, it's not a role. Can we please stop calling the execs the leaders? Leadership is a behavior that can occur anywhere in the organization. And if we can try and talk about leader that way, and then just talk about them as execs or bosses or managers.
Yeah, so when we try to persuade people to be open, it also means that any individuals can be a leader. Any of them, no matter how young, how lower level they are, they can always, because it's all about, like Rob said, it's about behavior, right? So yeah, but it's the best, but it is always better if the managers or be a leader. Because, you know, that's a perfect world. In a perfect world, we want them to be a leader.
It's a valuable attribute of a leader, of a manager, to be a leader. But there are successful managers who are not good leaders, and they're smart enough to surround themselves with people who are good leaders, or have a lieutenant or a peer who is a good leader, that they can leave the leadership aspects too. So there are managers who compensate for the fact that they're not a good leader, but certainly it's a good skill to have.
And I think actually, sorry, go ahead, Cherry.
And I think Eric plays a very important role here to take care of people and to, you know, I think that's wonderful. And it's kind of people, everyone have their strength and then take the roles where using their strength to support the group, right?
Exactly. That's exactly what I wanted to add here, that I also think really her team displays a lot of leadership skills in this situation, because I feel like reading this, I got the feeling that Marie's natural urge was to like smooth things over, avoid conflict, not really address what happened, but just comfort Sheila and move on. And I feel like the team helped saying like, let's get into a room and talk about this, which I think is also what you alluded to earlier, Jerry, that this is the important thing when there's a failure, is that we talk about it and learn from it, and not, either get mad or ignore it.
And another key word here, I think, is ritual too. Like, we love rituals, and the failure drinking the mead mug ritual, introducing rituals as a catalyst and a cause for people to come together to do these behaviors is quite important.
Yeah, I was curious to hear, because we do hear this ritual in the book, because based on Joe's former experience, that is what they did at her company whenever something failed. What other kinds of rituals have you seen around failure or the learning process of when something goes wrong?
You mean in the book or in reality?
In reality.
So some of our clients, they have the kind of every week learning. So in that every week learning, they have about 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon Friday, and they bring all the failure story to come and share. And then this week, for example, I went to I met this client and I failed. And after I failed, I tried to analyze why I failed and what lesson I can learn from it. And then they present the case, and then everyone say, "Oh, next time we should do this, do that," and blah blah, all that. So always the case that everyone can review and everyone can contribute to what lesson we learned, and they learn together. And I think it's a wonderful thing. It opened up a lot of psychological safety and also supporting each other. And sometimes I realize that when we are open up and talking about failure, actually we get more sympathy and support rather than talking about success, because people somehow they feel jealous when you talk about, oh, how well I did and here's the result, and they're not so keen. But if you talk about failure, then they want to be there to support you and to I think that's really good.
And another one we saw was that Jerry coached them to do a 15-minute stand-up every morning to plan the day, and they spontaneously started doing a 15-minute stand-up at the end of every day to reflect on the day. And in that reflection, they were at high psychological safety. They were actually quite critical of each other. They would say, today you exhibited this behavior and you kind of need to stop doing that, and okay, I will take that on. And they were quite brave because they felt safe together. But we didn't coach them to that afternoon thing. They just kind of spontaneously figured that out for themselves, which is, I think, one of the most rewarding things for a consultant is when they start doing it for themselves.
And also, we understand that when the culture, they have to be at a certain level to make people feel like safe to talk or to criticize or to give a feedback. It's not very good feedback to people, right? Yeah.
I just had this go ahead, Rob.
Oh, one more. So another one is you get the social rituals. I mean, in New Zealand and Australia, it's the pub on a Friday, Friday after work. In Vietnam, it's the karaoke session, or go out for a dinner, or go out for lunch quite often. But those, if it's a regular thing, they are opportunities to have, in a more relaxed environment, some quite frank conversations sometimes.
And we also in some organization, we even put the site, don't be asshole. when someone behaves something that the people think that's an asshole, then they say, yes, stop being asshole. So I think it's also talking about failure, right? If you keep doing that, we could all fail, right?
Yeah, I
Well,
was having this conversation with a relatively young professional who was asking me, how can I give critical feedback to my peers when they don't do good work? He was a software developer. And for me, it was a hard question to answer because it all depends on, well, how is the group together? What is the environment that they're in?
Yeah.
And he was very frustrated because he felt like they couldn't get to an excellent state of software because they couldn't figure out how to tell each other what was failing.
I think the question is, why can't you give that kind of feedback to you? I mean, that's the question. What is preventing that from being a natural thing to do?
Again, psychological safety.
Mm.
And also, I think people need to, one thing, the other day, we have a training for public. It's a parents and parenting group or in managers group join together. So I deliver a training that called open communication for like few hundreds of people joining. So in that training, I talk about if we want people to take it, criticize in a way that they don't think that you blame them, in the way that they understand that you are trying to help them, then we have to learn how to give a feedback or criticize, right? In a way that they feel good. So talking about your feeling, talking about your what happened when someone taken an action that affect to others or to your feeling or to the results. It's about the action, not about them. Right? Normally we talk about them. Why did you do that? Or so the people feel like they have to defend themselves.
There's an idea that got very fashionable that I think, glad it's good, is falling out of fashion, was the idea of the shit sandwich. Excuse me. Right. But so you say, oh, this report you did, I like the colors, the content is all absolute rubbish, but I'm glad that you spelled this word properly, and people just recognize that formula when you do it now, and they know that you're just doing it here comes the first positive piece of feedback, nice colors, and it's so superficial that I don't think that's a good way of doing what Cherry's saying. You have to sincerely be wanting to help. It has to be done with the best intentions, I think, or else it won't project.
And you just start saying some good thing, people say, okay, shit's coming.
Yeah, they know it's coming.
But is there another formula that you can put feedback in that will work?
Yes, we have the formula that as we're talking about X, Y, Z, right, darling? When you do X, I feel white, and I prefer that you will do Z.
I was going to say
always,
that.
Yeah.
That's an old marriage counselor's. We didn't get it from marriage counseling, by the way, but that's an old marriage counselor's. But that's where it first comes from, is interpersonal relationships, is presenting it to people like, when you do this, I feel. And getting them to recognize your feeling when they do this action. And so, when you write crap code, we all feel whatever, I don't know.
No, but simple and powerful, I think.
Yeah. It goes well with us, right, darling?
So when you read this, now we talked a bit about if you were to help Zebra Apps and Marie, you would have looked at like what are the cultural dysfunctions, starting like to kind of establish a starting point, as you said earlier. Are there any other like models or frameworks that came to mind when you read this that you would apply if you were to help these people manage?
Yeah, because that's not a starting point, is to say what's the deep root to this, right? I mean, so what it's more like, what are the starting points? How do you start with Marie? And again, probably haven't spent enough time analyzing it all, but she seems anxious still, right? So the lack of safety is definitely affecting her and her ability to function. So reassurance that you're doing okay and trying to reduce her anxiety, I think, would be one thing I'd be looking at. I think I'm a naturally anxious person, and Dr. Vu has done some wonderful work in coaching me to be less anxious. And some of that is kind of that Zen or Buddhist, just putting things aside, you know, just learning it's okay not to let it affect you, to just sort of say, well, it is, in the West, we'd say it is what it is, you know, trying to help her to reduce her anxiety would certainly be one of the things I'd be talking to her about early on.
And another thing that I think that if we put it in another angle, if we say, okay, it's good that, you know, it happens, it's really good, so we learn something, you know, we wouldn't learn anything if there's nothing happen. That's what we always say, you know. We've
gone full circle back to embrace failure now. Yeah.
It's really good. We learn a lot. Because if there's no situation, we learn nothing, right?
Also, she's kind of being set up to fail in a few ways. Her boss is doing things that are like, she's having to present this culture program that she didn't even plan on doing now to them. So again, the is what it is that, you know, how can you make the best of this situation rather than letting it cause you anxiety?
And I think it's talking about open and cooperate to invite people to work together. I think it's not just give someone a certain job to do by themselves. It's why don't we just invite people together and spend like 1 hour to have brainstorming, and okay, we have to what we want to achieve and what is the best way to do it and how we do it, you know. So that's simple, and does that make everyone's life easier? Everyone's learn what's going on, everyone know what we want to do to achieve, and I mean, life is much easier, and there's no failure in that way, right?
There's a lot of top down and one-on-one going on in this story, right? That the bosses know the answers, the bosses come up with the answers, the bosses tell people the answers, the bosses get upset when people don't ask them the answers, and A talks to B and B talks to C and C talks to A, and you know, there's a lot of that in here. And so as Cherry says, just Eric demonstrated, if you just get people together, you know, to talk, that is, and we run rituals of half-day or one-day planning with hundreds of people getting together. And the goal that we pull out of that, especially Cherry, she's the master facilitator for getting people to a result in a day. It freaks me out watching sometimes. She just really can get 200 people to get to the end of the day and go, well, that's that, then let's go do that. You know, it's quite spectacular. But that's part of the power of just big room planning, you know, is one of the trendy names, just getting people in a room and talking about these things rather than having poor old Marie having to invent something that someone higher up told her is what she's going to do. That's not ever a form. That doesn't get us back to where do you start with Marie, but it would certainly be, Marie, go do this. Get some talking going. Get some help by getting a bunch of people together.
I would be curious to learn more about big room planning and some of your tricks, Cherry.
Wouldn't we all? by the way, I do try and encode it on our website. So there is stuff on the Teal Unicorn website trying to capture what we do. And our secret formula is so secret that we publish it.
I will make sure to put it in the show notes, a link to your website.
I realize that having a ritual is really good for an organization to, understand the same thing, speak the same language, have the same goal, and so far I don't. It's always whatever events that we organize, that it's always get better and result than we think it would be. Always. Sometimes before we start, I said to Rob, I don't know what I'm doing. Seriously, I don't know how it goes, and I don't know what I'm doing, but just go with the flow and be open. Okay, but it's always, I'm quite strict on structure. Okay, we move on. Otherwise, people are stuck in one thing and argue for whole day. I said, okay, we have 10 minutes for this. We do this, and then for whatever reason we get, we happy with it. Okay, move on. That's how it works. And for the whole day, we can get huge results. Even from the strategy to action plan in a day. With like few hundred people.
Yeah, if you create the right conditions, the results are emergent. So we were much influenced by open space technology, it's called open space. And the principles of that has been a big influence on how we approach these things.
But I would also assume that it requires that you as facilitators in the room apply your intuition and sensing of what is happening in the room and try to follow how does the energy flow and how can you tap into that and how can you support what is emerging. Can you learn that, how to do that?
Yes. Oh, and it's more about experience. You learn from one by one. You grow up every day. Every day that I grow up, like sometimes I said, okay, we have 10 minutes to work here. But when I feel like, okay, people have enough, 5 minutes, stop, we get it. So move on. So, just have to be very sensible. And you make a decision at the point that you think, it's right.
We all grow in our ability over time. I think it's I look back to my consulting 16 years ago, and it's a bit embarrassing to look at. But hey, you've got to start somewhere, and you learn and you grow. There's not really any substitute. We did do open space training, by the way, which was really helpful. And we were lucky to be trained by Dan Mesick and to meet Harrison Owen himself, the creator of open space, in that training. So that was definitely a leg up. It's worth doing the training, but beyond that, it's just experience as a consultant.
And also we from what we learn, we develop every time. It's nothing look the same at all. And nothing look the same. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's another thing. We are agile, and so like we like playing simulation games, right? Is another ritual that we adore, and we use other people's. So there's I don't know how many of your audience are IT, but there's a famous book, The Phoenix Project, right? And so there's a game based on the Phoenix Project that comes out of the Netherlands, and I did 20 something of those and learned a lot about games from Jan Schult, the inventor, who we now consider a personal friend. And went to visit in his caravan the other day. And so we learned games, and so now we create our own, and we have one game where people build little Lego diggers, right? We have a factory making these things, and they learn about flow and bureaucracy. And so that's another form of ritual, but we never play the same game twice. So when we're setting up for the day with these things, we say, now understand that we will be trying a few things in this game today that we've never tried before. And in the middle of the day, you might see me go, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Let's try that. And we will just spontaneously change the game because somebody asked a question we'd never thought of before. So the game is always different every time we play it. The Teal space, as we call it, planning ritual, Cherry will just be winging it in terms of, right, we'll do it slightly differently this way today. We're always exploring and learning. We're not locked into some formulaic ritual that has to be done this way every time.
I think it's an interesting point, kind of how you as facilitators and professionals in your space grow as your inner journey, you can say, and also maybe the parallel to Marie and her current state of the inner journey, and also what she's embarking on, and may not realize the extent of, if she wants to change the culture in the organization, how much she as a person needs to change also. I would be curious to hear your thoughts on that.
That's a really big... Sorry, darling.
No, you go.
Yeah. I think, yes, when we talk about the new, if we try to invite people to join a workshop, for example, and to get the result from people, then the persons as a leader, like Marine, as managers, they have to learn a lot about how to, get out of the way, shut up, listen, and inviting. It's not like I'm a superstar, I have to do everything and I have an answer. Then there's nothing work. You have to be very humble. You step down, you encourage people to talk, a lot you have to change to be able to be a good facilitators or managers. People, because naturally people love to hear their own voice. Is that right? So yeah, go ahead, darling.
It gives Shine wrote a really good book called Humble Consulting, and I think consulting requires a lot more humility than I see in many consultants. We try to be humble. We're big on, we don't know the answers. One of our first big clients was a clothing company. I make the joke every time because I am always wearing one of their shirts. And, it was a big clothing, and when we first arrived as consultants, they were like, "Well, what do you know about making shirts?" We said, "Nothing." "What do you know about manufacturing?" "Not much." "Well, it's like, what are you here for then?" And so, "We don't know anything about your job. We're not here to tell you how to do your job." And in many consulting engagements, one of our standard lines is always, "Can you please stop asking us for the answers?
We don't know the answer."
It's not the consultant's job. We believe it's not the consultant. There are specialist expert consultants who, if you ask them, to take a pertinent example, if you ask them, how should I build the hull of a submarine? You should probably listen to highly specialist expert consultants. There is a time, but just in general for ways of working in an organization and how should people work, I don't think anyone knows the answer. It's a matter of exploring the possibilities, and it's a matter of the people doing the work identifying the adjacent possible, identifying the, and we're there to inject a bit of theory and to provide a lot of facilitation. Midwives is another great word. I think consultants should be midwives to the solution.
Yeah, I like that metaphor. AK, do you have any questions you would like to ask before we start rounding off?
I think we need to start rounding off now.
Okay. Well, I would be curious to hear both from you, Rob, and you, Cherry. What do you think happens next in the story?
What do you think, darling?
What do I want to happen, or what do I think
That
happen?
What do you
Because-
want is the best, I think.
Yeah, I am deeply cynical, I think, about the real world. And once an organization is caught in a negative loop, then it's very hard to break that feedback loop. So if good people are leaving, which is their core problem they're trying to address, then, you know, there's increasing desperation amongst those who remain. And so, you know, I would probably in the real world be a little bit pessimistic unless someone really senior gets visionary, right? Because our success, one of the big reasons for our success is our clients are self-selecting, right? The big boss is actually interested in hearing about other ways of working. And without that curiosity, you can start, you can do, she could move forward to generate some guerrilla stuff under the air cover of this culture program, right? It would provide a good smokescreen to actually start doing some guerrilla stuff to undermine the management culture, to start planting seeds to alternatives and trying to create an environment to allow that to blossom. But in that sort of transformation, oh no, I hate that word, in that sort of advance, we always say never let a good crisis go to waste, that you need some sort of catalyst. So she could do guerrilla work to start laying change seeds down as part of the culture program. But something would have to happen to wake the organization up as a whole to say, oh, we do need to do things differently. And the boss to go, I'm going to lose my job. You know, I mean, that's when the people who have been doing some guerrilla stuff can say, oh, well, funny you should mention that, boss. Here's something we're working on already, you know, and start, here's one I did prepared earlier, you know, start pulling out these little learnings and these little examples and these proof points. That's a lovely phrase. So that would be a lovely story arc, would be if some of them formed triads, got together to start doing stuff, a culture program that gives us some money and some excuse to do things, and let's start planting some seeds, and then wait for the boss to get fired, or us to get acquired, or you know, we to be on the brink of bankruptcy, some sort of crisis that will allow us to then.
I have a similar story in this marine story. One of our students, she's a head of HR working in a factory for Samsung factory, and she got, you know, this the exactly the same like the situation here. So I actually coach her to apply the new ways of thinking and managing. Okay, each individual in her, she got 9 people before in her department. Then each individuals have to do a very small job. So you pay salary, you do this and you do that, and everyone just have to be able to do one thing. And then I said, no, now you have to cross-train them to make sure that everyone can do each other's job, and open up and learn as a group, not only individuals, everyone. If I be able to learn if I am good at something, I will teach everyone. And if someone's good at something, they will teach everyone. And then later on, she got only 6 people. And the company gave them another that called another job that called just before they have only HR, and later on, because they're so good and they have so much freedom and times, so they give them more time. Their job is to go around organization, and then see if there's anything that they can improve in terms of flow of work or waste management or anything at all. So they have time to go around and pick up the thing that they can improve, and they do it. So internally from the very small department, they can, go further upper, and once everyone hate them. The CEO hate them, the director both hate them, and everyone, because they think that they interfere too much, and people don't like it. People don't like to be, interfere, and people don't like to their problems talking publicly. So they don't like it. But later on, that HR girl said to the boss, the CEO, say, look, you have enough money, your job is already, you are the CEO. Why you are so scared? What do you have to lose? You are at the best place. You are at the best place to do the best. Why you are scary? I am not scary. So why you are scary? And then she actually influenced to the CEO, and the CEO later on got promoted to the head of the region. And then she wrote an email to her, say, every time when I dare not to do something, I think of you. That's how a person can change someone's life. And I think in that situation, you can, the story is a real story, not just someone,
A lot of
not
top
a novel.
bosses have imposter syndrome. They are actually very scared where they are. And I think a manager below can coach up and as Cherry's saying, help them to blossom and be better people as well.
Yeah.
That's an awesome example, and a real world story that resonates very well with the topic of the conversation we're trying to have. That's thank you for sharing that, Sherry. If our listeners have questions, want to find you, follow up, where can they find you?
We are Teal Unicorns, so we live at tealunicorn.com, and then we're active on LinkedIn, and Cherry's very active on Facebook because that's the thing still in Vietnam. But we can be found via tealunicorn.com through to those.
Or find us at Dr. Cherry Vu and Rob England.
drcherry.vu works, not Rob England, but yeah, I must set that up. Yeah.
No, I just say this. I mean, that's me. It just
on Twitter.
On LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn.
I never use Twitter. I use Twitter, but I don't. Not anymore.
Yeah, we can be found on LinkedIn.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having this conversation with us today. It was very interesting, enlightening, and I have some brand new thoughts about the story that I wouldn't have had without you.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hope it's helpful. Yeah.